the rival in the big leagues, and not just what he is or what he could be, but more about what he represents and what it means for the Red Sox, because I think people need to appreciate how unusual a move this is for the Red Sox to call up a pitcher like this, to pitch at this stage of the season with stakes on the line. So that's where we're going to start. 617-779-0985. That and the dismissal release of Walker Bueller. Some backstories there, I think, that are pertinent or relevant to the conversation. Usually on Friday, Matt McCarthy is here. Tyler Milliken is here. But, again, we never seem to have a full roster ourselves. So Tyler's alongside. And I should also mention we are going to go an extra 30 minutes tonight. So Tyler will take you from 7 to 7:30. But we have a lot to get to on the baseball hour. So, again, 617-779-0985. Tyler, your initial thoughts on the fact that Payton Tolle is pitching this game tonight against Paul Skeens.
I'm ecstatic. I think this is one of the more exciting debuts you've had in a long time, and that says something when you have the likes of Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, Christian Campbell in the last year, and I think it's something different when you have an elite starting pitching prospect going out there. When you have the position player, you're going to get your 4 at-bats, you're going to go play in the outfield, we get it, yada, yada. With Payton Tolle, we're going to go out here and watch him go out there and for 4 innings or 5 innings. Now, I think a lot of people don't realize this, but when you look at how many pitches he's been throwing, he hasn't gone over 80 pitches since June 28th. So this is a guy who's already 10 innings above what he threw last year in college, never entered or played in a professional game down the stretch last year. The Red Sox sent him down to Fort Myers to work on things and essentially develop the arsenal he's wowing everyone with. But I think the ascension of Payton Tolle over really the last 4 or 5 months or so has been extremely fascinating to watch, because this is the exact guy Craig Breslow was kind of hired to go and chase after. Go find these underappreciated guys in the draft that maybe you think could be the next ace or top of the rotation starter in baseball. And we've seen for the Red Sox, really dating back to the John Lester and Clay Buchholz days, some of their inabilities to develop starting pitching, at least to this degree. And Brian Bayo has helped, buck that trend quite a bit. And I think people forget sometimes that Brian Bayo right now, compared to Payton Tolle, who's the number 40 prospect in the sport by Baseball America, Brian Bayo topped out at 21. But for Payton Tolle, who entered this year not having thrown a pitch in professional baseball, went from high A to double A to triple A, made 9 outings, 9 or 8 starts, and 1 weird bulk appearance in double A. But to already be moving up to the big leagues, to me, this shows a level of aggression and just kind of a level of seriousness we've been asking the Red Sox to have for a long time. And seeing Walker Bueller get released in this manner, it reminds me of Hanley Ramirez in 2018 a little bit, where, yeah, you're making a very uncomfortable move with a veteran, but this is because they believe this team is a World Series caliber team. It's a team that's supposed to go and make a serious playoff run. And guess what? There's no room to trim the fat or protect egos or do anything like that. And I think with Payton Tolle, the development of the secondaries is what got him here.
Okay, so Tyler, the part that is, first of all, go back to something you said a minute ago. In June,
yes,
he has not thrown more than 80 pitches since June?
Not in a single outing.
Okay, so what does that tell you?
They've been trying to protect him. They wanted to monitor his workload.
Okay, so they wanted to protect him for now?
No, I think in a perfect world, they didn't expect to have to lean on him to this degree. I think in their ideal world, he would have came up maybe towards the end of September, and you would have saw him in the Chris Sale role right after he got drafted, or even the Garrett Crochet role back in 2020, where
pitching out of the bullpen.
Yep, come out, throw heat. Let's see you hit up 100 and go nuts. Now, Payton Tolle's a lot different than those guys, and I'll tell you, it's the body. You go back and you watch what Crochet looked like in 2020, you might pass out. He looked closer to Chris Sale than he does a Tolley or the current day Crochet. But I think based on their failures and shortcomings at the trade deadline and their inability to kind of get maybe that top of the rotation starter they wanted, I think Walker Bueller just never really figuring it out for them. And arguably the most disappointing and something you can't look past, Kyle Harrison just not taking the steps. All the talk of him when you traded Rafael Devers for him and what they thought he could be after a couple weeks down there. Payton Tolle, a guy drafted in the 2nd round back in 2024, who 18 months ago was a two-way player at TCU, has shown the ability to develop secondaries quicker than Kyle Harrison.
Okay, so he blew right by him in the organizational depth chart.
Isn't that the biggest thing you kind of look at and say, wow, this guy jumped a guy in Kyle Harrison who, it's a pretty similar profile in terms of arsenal. It's a guy with a really good fastball. Now,
how old's Harrison?
24.
Okay, so this guy's 2 years younger.
2 years younger.
And developmentally just blew right by him this year.
Flew by him.
Okay, so here's the part that everyone's missing. And I understand we're going to play some sound for you tonight on the show from Craig Breslow explaining why they made this decision. We'll also explain or play sound from Breslow explaining why Walker Bueller was released. And again, I think there's a side story there that nobody really asked about with Bueller over at Fenway Park. That has to have been part of the conversation. We'll get to that here in a second. But the number one reason, and these two things are connected, Payton Tolle being on the roster and Walker Bueller not, are connected for this simple reason. The Red Sox are desperate. Okay, they're desperate. And when I say they're desperate, they have a chance at first place in the division. They're in possession of a playoff spot. They're not desperate to stay in the race. They're desperate from the standpoint of they don't have many other alternatives. They have a ton of injuries. Bueller was pitching like garbage. They had sent him to the bullpen. They don't have a ton of roster flexibility. And so in order to accommodate Payton Tolle, they had to release Walker Bueller. Now, I just want to add, Tyler, that for the Red Sox to do this with a pitcher like this, and Payton Tolle is generally regarded now as the best prospect in the organization,
yes,
as long as you don't count Roman Anthony as a prospect anymore, or Marcelo Meyer as a prospect.
BA counts Meyer weirdly. And anyone who has Franklin Arias as the number one prospect in the system, and there are publications that do, it's flat out wrong.
Okay, so the Tolley was the guy that a lot of teams were focused on at the trade deadline. He's the guy everybody wanted. The Red Sox put him in the deal for Joe Ryan, but couldn't finish that trade. And now here he is. Tolley's going to get the ball in September effectively. And this thing all lines up. And for us, for those of us in the media, this thing lines up perfectly. Tolley was in the deal for Ryan. They didn't make the trade. The team has been winning anyway. Giolito and Bayo have performed. Now Tolley is needed at the big league level. All of that is going to play out right in front of us. And as far as night one is concerned, Tolle is going to face Paul Skeens, who is probably the most dynamic, not probably, is the most dynamic young pitcher in the game and maybe the best pitcher in the game, period.
And I think you look at the Pirates right now, lowest scoring offense in all of baseball. If you're looking for a landing, yes, it's scary going against the blockbuster guy in Paul Skeens. This is supposed to be an offense that Tolley should be able to at least survive against and get through with as he takes the bumps. Because there's going to be bumps here. There's no way there won't be.
I mean, the Pirates are really a 4A organization.
Exactly.
This is perfect.
Especially post-trade deadline.
And yet, here's what I'm going to do. Kevin Majori, if we could call for Breslow number 4 here, please, Kevin. So this, to me, is the most interesting part of the conversation with Payton Tolle is how are they going to use him? Is this a one-off, or is he going to be here and they're actually going to lean on him a little bit down the stretch? So I think you can hear the question at the beginning of this cut, but this really pertains to what the plan is for Payton Tolle. Again, this is Craig Breslow, Chief Baseball Officer.
Craig, does Payton have a chance to kind of go somewhere with this now, or is this a one-off?
I think we brought up Payton, with the expectation that he's going to be able to contribute down the stretch for us, and exactly what that looks like, I think is to be determined. But he's over the last 5 months, he's really impressed at every level. He's made significant strides in terms of his development, and we have every reason to believe that he can be a very good major league starting pitcher.
Okay, right now is what he means. They're bringing him up in the middle of a pennant race. Let me just tell you, this is unprecedented for the Red Sox. Unprecedented. Fans need to understand that, because you don't typically bring up a young pitcher in the middle of a playoff chase and expect him to make a contribution, quote unquote, down the stretch.
This isn't Clay Buchholz getting spot starts here and there to help you get through August and September like he did back in 2007.
No, this kid's here to help him win games. He's here to help him win games. So this raises a ton of questions. Number one, is he ready for it, and are they putting him at risk by putting him in this scenario? Number two, his first game is against the best guy in the big leagues, in Paul Skeens. So you want to question the Red Sox? You can do that. You want to praise them? You can do that. I'll give you my thoughts on how they've approached this. We'll give you Tyler's as well. But make no mistake, this is a highly unusual move. And the Red Sox are taking a bit of a gamble by sending him out there. I know a lot of you want to see this kid pitch. I do too. So does Tyler. So does everybody. But it's risky to put a kid like this in this spot, especially when you consider how little experience he has as a professional. And we'll outline for you the last time the Red Sox had a starter with this sort of a resume or profile that they were asking to make a contribution with so little experience as a professional. And the answer might surprise you. We'll do that when we come back on the Baseball Hour.
You're listening to the
Payton Tolle, Paul Skeens at Fenway Park tonight. We'll give you a little bit more from Breslow here momentarily. But let me ask you, Tyler, and again, let me ask you, those of you out there, it's a good matchup at Fenway Park tonight. Skeens and Tolle, you get to see, one of the best pitcher in the game in all probability. Talk about a guy who's overpowering and intimidating and just fun to watch. Skeens is fun to watch. And the next guy in the Red Sox pipeline. And let me tell you how rare it is for Payton Tolle to be pitching in this game. The last time the Red Sox brought a guy to the minor leagues who had from the minor leagues as a starting pitcher who had pitched as little as this guy and put him in what I would call meaningful games was Roger Clemens back in 1984. Okay, it hasn't happened in a long time. Now, Abe Alvarez, like some of this was online today. The Red Sox drafted a kid, 20 years ago. His name was Abe Alvarez. He was a second-round pick, pitched in California in college. I want to say it was like Long Beach State or something like that. You'd have to look that up. But they had a doubleheader in July against the Orioles. They brought up Alvarez from the minors to pitch game one and then sent him right back. In other words, they didn't expect him to stay with the team. And Alvarez's career never really panned out. This kid was drafted a year ago. A year ago. He's only been in the organization for a year. He's made 3 starts at AAA. What did you say to me this afternoon, this morning, Tyler? You said he has made 9 starts above A-ball?
Above high A, yes.
Okay, 9 starts above A-ball. 20 overall, and even 2 of those were relief outings in which he pitched. One of them was a bulk outing, you said. So he's really only made 18 starts in the minor leagues, which is how many Clemens made. Okay, Clemens made 18. Now he's here pitching in August and, really September. And Craig Breslow is telling you that they see him as able to help them, quote unquote, down the stretch. Now, I'll just tell people quickly that down the stretch doesn't mean he's going 6 innings every night. He might pitch 4. They're going to limit his pitch count. He may not be able to throw anything in a pressure situation other than a fastball. There are serious limitations on what he's going to be able to give them, and yet he's here. Are they stupid, Tyler, for doing this?
No, I don't think they are stupid. In a perfect world, you wouldn't put yourself in this position. I think in terms of his actual arsenal, the truth was, and you saw it after he got past high A, and a lot of people know this, if you have an elite fastball, your secondaries really won't matter until you get to Double A and Triple A. And I think that's what really allowed them to be confident in this. A couple weeks ago, I hosted the Baseball Hour while you were out, Mazz, and I had Ian Kundla of Sox Prospects on, who over the last 10 days or so was hot on this Payton Tolle stuff, really seemed to sniff out the smoke. At that time, he gave the odds of Tolle being in the big leagues this year less than 20%. Now, he quickly saw, and a lot of injuries have kind of changed the picture, I think, with Richard Fitz going down, with Cooper Criswell's elbow barking. But I think Tolle's development of his cutter and curveball, which weren't real pitches he felt comfortable throwing when he got drafted a year ago, and part of it was his limited pitching experience as a two-way player in college. But to see the cutter now become a potential above-average offering for him, the curveball looked to be at least average, and you already factored in with a changeup that's average or a little bit better, and a slider/sweeper, he throws it, a little bit different shape from time to time that's at least average. All of a sudden, it's not just a fastball that's beating guys. When Garrett Crochet got called up, after he got drafted, it was because he had a great fastball. Payton Tolle, what unlocked them and I think gave them the confidence was, oh no, he has stuff to go through a lineup multiple times. And that shined more than anything since he got to AAA. And I think that's why they feel comfortable in this place. To me, the biggest thing that I'm worried about here is injury. Because you go back to when Crochet got called up, many people forget. That's when he injured his elbow, and a lot of stuff started going wrong. He had problems at Tennessee with his shoulder, don't get me wrong. But when they put him in that spot, they were forcing him into a spot to try and
Tyler, if this kid gets hurt, they're going to look like idiots.
Yes, and they're going to have to own that and eat that, and that's the risk they're taking here. I think they look at it and they think his body type, maybe he has a little bit more in the tank, but even still, he's throwing hard. 98.9 is where he's topped out with his fastball. With adrenaline pumping tonight in the first inning, is he probably going to hit 99? Could he get to 100?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought up the fastball. What is his average fastball velocity?
It sits really closer to 94, 96, but it can get up to 98.
Okay, so, but from everything I've read, and this is an important thing for fans to watch and understand too, from everything I've read and understood, one of the things that makes his fastball elite, and that, as everybody keeps saying, his fastball will play in the big leagues, is that his extension, his release point, is closer to home plate than many guys. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. And so as a result, 94, 96 actually probably feels like 97, 98.
Yeah, there's actually, and with his low arm slot, it's very similar to Joe Ryan. When you start to dive into the metrics and a lot of stuff like that, that rising fastball that Joe Ryan doesn't throw 98,
No, he
99.
doesn't. No, but it jumps on people.
And it's the same concept, and that's why people, when they talked about Joe Ryan, it was, oh, Craig Breslow's type, just like Payton Tolle. Oh, that was his type. That's why they targeted him in the second round last year.
Okay. So, again, there is some risk involved in this. Don't kid yourself if you're a Red Sox fan. You all love the idea of a young player coming up, the promise and the potential of a guy you've never seen before and how good he could be. But don't delude yourself. There is some risk here. Ray and Revere. Ray, what do you got?
Yeah, listen, I think this is really indicative of the fact that they stood pat at the trading deadline, and the first wild card gets all the home games, and the second and third are very devalued. They're only half team up on the Yankees. The Yankees have an easy schedule closing the season, and I think the Red Sox are regretting the fact that they didn't go out and get another arm, and they're taking, in my view, an unnecessary risk.
So,
but
Ray, what, Dustin May's not doing it for you? Is that what you're telling me? So you tell me, Tyler, did they screw up at the deadline? Should they have added someone who could give them more innings? And is this the real reason why Payton Tolle is here?
1,010%. Anyone who wants to sit there and act like, first off, Craig Breslow the whole time was planning for Payton Tolle to do this, no, he was on the table in those trades. If the Twins and he had read that situation right and they were willing to make the deal, Payton Tolle would be gone and Joe Ryan would be here. You could hear the disappointment in Craig Breslow's voice. You knew the situation he was in after the deadline. They had failed to get the job done, not only with Joe Ryan, Sandy Alcantara as well. Those were the two teams they were talking with at that time throughout that last final day. I think even the Dustin May trade, which was an overpay when you look at it at the time compared to, not even a top 30 guy going for Charlie Morton, or not even a top 100 guy going for Shane Bieber. Has anyone seen what Shane Bieber did in his first start for Toronto?
Was excellent,
He shoved. That's a guy who wanted to be here, and you were the runner-ups for over the offseason. The only reason he stayed in Cleveland was because he was about to have a kid, and he knew that, all right, I'm comfortable here, family, and I'm rehabbing my elbow injury. Shane Bieber is the kind of arm for me where, yes, you were giving up something of value. It would have been along the lines of a Brandon Clark, who was a top 100 prospect for a minute earlier in the year, but fell out pretty quickly, closer to that 7 to 10 range in the system right now. Shane Bieber was the kind of guy who, if he didn't have a ton in the tank, cool, maybe he's closer to a third or fourth starter. If you get real Shane Bieber, the guy he was a couple years ago, that was a 2 or 3 starter, kind of exactly what you were starving for, a postseason performer in Shane Bieber in that. So, you are putting Payton Tolle in danger here somewhat to make this happen. I'd rather them be aggressive. I think these are chances you take with the current state of the American League and how weak it is, because there's not a team that I'm scared of. I think the priority needs to be getting the first wild card and being at home, because you look at the other teams, the Yankees, the Mariners, 41-28, 41-27. Even the Blue Jays, 44-22 at home. When the Red Sox are at home, they're a different kind of team.
And they all are.
Yes,
yeah.
And that's what most good teams do. You clean up at home and you survive on the road, right?
Now look, at the end of the day, here's what I'm going to tell you. I didn't think the Red Sox would ever make a move like this, and I'm not calling them stupid for it. Honestly, they don't have many other choices, but I give them credit for not eliminating this.
No.
Okay, so look, these games are important, and facing Skeens is not an easy stage to walk in on, but if Payton Tolle is going to pitch meaningful games over the balance of the season and potentially in October, well, then put him in the spotlight right away and see if he can handle it. So I would tell you tonight, things to look for. Watch in terms of how fast he's moving on the mound between pitches. If they show it, watch how fast he's moving.
He's a quick worker.
Okay,
very quick.
But I don't mean in terms of his, his pace. I mean just it's going to be hard to see because we haven't seen him before. But if he's sped up is what I'm getting at. If he is sped up, then he's caught up in the moment. And frankly, I would expect him to be a little sped up, at least in the early part of the game. Even at AAA, correct me if I'm wrong, he struggled with the first 7 batters he saw.
Yeah, that first inning was very unfair. He should have escaped with no runs. Mikey Romero couldn't turn a double play in that game. But yes, he gave up 2 homers later in that inning. And you saw the game sped up on him a little bit. He started getting away from the fastball, couldn't land the secondaries. And at times, as we've seen, the secondaries are the thing that have taken a step forward. But that first inning, he struggled. But I will say, when you look at what the Red Sox are doing right now, it's not too different than what the Mets have going on. with what they're doing with some of their arms. Nolan McLean, who they just recently called up, a top 100 guy. Jonah Tong, another top 100 guy. They're another team that failed to get the starter they wanted at the deadline, and they're calling up some of their young arms to try and carry them. It feels like the Red Sox are following a similar pursuit here, and yeah, there's a ton of risk and a ton
They
of
don't have a
variables.
choice now, Tyler.
No.
They really don't have a choice. But again, I give them credit for not eliminating the option. And this does relate directly to Walker Bueller. The Red Sox needed a spot on the 40-man roster to get Tolley here. He's not even on the 40-man, and most fans don't understand the protocol and the logistics. In order to play in the big leagues, you have to be on the 40-man roster. This kid wasn't on it. To get him on, they had to get rid of somebody else. And it's another reason they released Bueller. In fact, here's Craig Breslow when asked. This is Breslow too, Kevin. Why they gave Bueller his outright release rather than designating him for an assignment, and I'll explain the difference to you momentarily.
Craig, but why the outright release rather than DFA at this point? Is that to give him like kind of a courtesy, to give him a bit of a head start on catching on elsewhere?
Yeah, just trying to be mindful and respectful of who he is and what he's accomplished, and felt like that was the fairest way to treat him at this point.
Okay, bull crap. Bull crap. It might have been part of the discussion. They needed the roster spot. And when you designate a player for assignment, I think it's 72 hours. You have like 3 days. It might be more than that. It used to be a little bit more, I think. But you have a period of time to decide what you're going to do with them. That means you can demote him, you can trade him, you can release him. In the case of Bueller, I'm not sure demotion was an option because he's been in the big league so long that I think he would have to accept the assignment to AAA. And again, some of these rules have been modified over the years. It gets a little complicated. But a release is, we're not even going to go through that process. We're not even going to see if someone will trade us, some A-League, A-ball player, or send us a financial consideration for you because we want you off the roster immediately. Okay, that was the note. We're done. See you later. It's over. We're never going to talk to you again. Okay, so they did that, and there was one person earlier this week who said that the Red Sox might actually release or designate Walker Bueller, and I glossed over it because I didn't think it was possible, and as it turns out, this person was right. So who's got headlines tonight, Kevin? You? Okay. Kevin's got your headlines. Don't go anywhere because I do want to get a little bit more into Walker Bueller. We'll do that. We'll continue the Payton Tolle discussion when we come back on the Baseball Hour. Okay, bull crap. Chris Cotillo of Mass Live. I thought it was important to play that again because he said this earlier in the week, and I didn't respond to it on the air. But I thought, well, I don't know about that. I don't know if they're going to release him. They can probably use him in the bullpen. He's get some experience. Maybe he develops into some sort of middle reliever for them, and they'll get something out of him, at least down the stretch or in the playoffs. And Chris Cotillo nailed it. I mean, I just think it's important because it's, I don't want to say it was outrageous, but when he said it, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. And he was right. So again, this is Cotillo earlier in the week on the Baseball Hour. And I left out the question, but the question I asked him is, the original question is, who's going to be their number 4 starter now that Bueller's in the bullpen and Richard Fitz is injured? What are they going to do? What will they do if they get to, let's say in the division series, they need 4 starters, they get to a game 4, and they've already gone through Crochet, Bayo, and Giolito. Who pitches game 4? And Chris Cotillo said, honestly, I think it'd be a bullpen game. And he said Payton Tolle was probably a long shot. But then, again, as he started talking about where they were and the number of injuries we had, I want to play it for you again. Listen to it. This is what he said.
It's easy to forget, right? They have 4 starting pitchers who are out for the year in Houck, Sutter Crawford, Sandoval, and Dobbins. And basically, Bueller's out of that equation, too. So he's not going back in the rotation. I know you guys, I think Big Jim thought that, they might play around with that. I think he's closer to getting DFA'd than getting put back in the rotation, honestly.
As it turned out, he didn't even get DFA'd. It was an outright release. So we theorized, Tyler, that the relationship, something happened for this to end so abruptly for Walker Bueller. And I think you have some perspective on this. So what happened?
Yeah, so throughout the season, if you've heard any of the radio broadcasts, Will Fleming's been talking about it a lot, about maybe a disagreement between Walker Bueller and Andrew Bailey and the pitching infrastructure in terms of the amount of pitches he was throwing. Walker Bueller has 7 pitches. Even down to the point in his first relief outing, he threw 7 pitches. I think it was 19 total pitches for the whole thing. He threw all 7 different pitch types. So not something you would see in a reliever profile. They certainly didn't want to see it when he was working as a starter because you were seeing he was having significant command issues where you're walking over 4 per 9. The worst of his career was, why are you throwing all of these pitches instead of harnessing this thing to 3 or 4 things that you feel really comfortable for? And it was clear with his fastball not being what it was, he was trying to get by with smoke and mirrors and fooling people than the actual stuff beating anyone. And I went back to the story from Rob Bradford. It had come out right after the All-Star break. Bueller had went and shoved against the Phillies, and he was giving those annoying quotes between that and the Padres start. I get up for these NL playoff teams. Thanks. Spare me on that. You don't get up for anyone else. But Rob Bradford had this in his little write-up, and to me, it reminded me of something on the Patriots side, and I'll mention it after I read it to you, but I wonder if this sat a little weird with Craig Breslow and Andrew Bailey. But during the All-Star break, Bueller ventured to the Maven Baseball Lab in Atlanta, a facility that is known throughout baseball as a place for big leaguers to use biomechanics to fine-tune their crafts. Bueller had this to say. Just talking to some biomechanics people, a couple of different ones, I went to a place who kind of specializes in that in Atlanta. To be honest with you, just having different conversations with different people sparks things. I found a couple of cues that made everything feel a little bit more normal. Now it's just honing that in with a little more balance to it.
Okay, so what you're saying is he went outside of the organization to get help at the trading deadline.
Yes.
And the people in the organization got irritated.
And then immediately goes out and pitches well and says, point to them. Don't look at the Red Sox. Don't say they got me on the right path. No, I went here and it all kind of clicked for me.
Okay.
As we could see with the lack of command and control, that wasn't the case. But we talked with the Patriots over the last couple of years. The Patriots really getting upset with Mac Jones when he started referencing and going back to Alabama for help and going outside of the organization.
Belichick got pissed.
Yes, almost as a sign of betrayal. And you look at Craig Breslow. When Craig Breslow went and pursued Walker Bueller, a lot of people forget, Breslow wanted to give him a multi-year deal. Bueller chose the 1-year deal because he was like, oh, no, I'm going to get back, I'm going to pitch great, and I'm going to get that extension that I need for the second half of my career. So Craig Breslow, who went and did presentations for Jameson Taillon in Chicago, has been this guy who identifies these pitchers and goes after them. Walker Bueller kind of laughed in his face to some degree. When he went over the All-Star break and we're hearing these, they don't agree on the pitch usage and some of these different things he's incorporating, and then you go outside of the organization, you come back from the All-Star break.
It's an insult, Tyler.
Yes, you're spitting on what Craig Breslow was kind of known for, what Andrew Bailey has made his money on. And you're saying, I trust these people on the outside more than the people who invested $21 million.
So they didn't trust each other.
No.
Or Bueller didn't trust them in the relationship. It sounds like it didn't really connect from the beginning. So that's good to know. Look, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Tyler, again, is going to be with us till 7:30. In fact, he'll have you alone for the last half hour when we come back on the Baseball Hour.
The Baseball Hour with Tony Mazz.
Hey, it's Mazz for Bigelow Tea, and you know what I like more than anything? Choices, options. So what does that have to do with Bigelow? Well, they have those things. They have lots. Time for the McGovern Ford F-150 giveaway. Username that we're looking for. Okay, again, if you're familiar with the contest, I give you an Instagram username, and that person has 985 seconds, 16 minutes, a little over 16 minutes to call. So the Instagram username who is our candidate for this segment, C. Belanger 54, and that is C as in Charles, Belanger, C. Belanger 54, Belanger like Mark Belanger. A lot of you aren't going to remember who the hell that is. Mark Belanger used to be a shortstop who played for the Baltimore Orioles. In fact, I think he was from Massachusetts. Milliken, maybe you can check that just to see how smart I am.
I'm figuring out this on the go as well.
Okay, C. Belanger 54. You have 985 seconds to call us back on the contest line, which is 617-931-0985. Don't confuse that with the caller line. The contest line, 617-931-0985. If you call us back in the next 16 minutes, 25 seconds, you will qualify to win a 2025 F-150 from McGovern Automotive Group and 98.5 The Sports Hub. Again, C. Belanger 54. 617-779-0985 is the studio number.
Mazz.
Yes.
You were right.
Okay, Mark
Pittsfield, Mass.
Belanger. There you go. Never let it be said, Tyler, that you can't learn something from
Mazz knows ball.
Was there ever a Whamilton in the MLB?
Inside joke. There was a J.W. Hamilton that Felger referred to as J. Whamilton.
God.
Do we have that saved somewhere? I hope. Oh, you got to grab that one, Kevin. In any case, give me that piece of paper I gave you, Tyler. Give me that back. I want to play for you a little more on Payton Tolle and why he is here. And by the way, let me just tell you, I just saw him.
Whamilton.
I just saw Payton Tolle throwing in the bullpen and some highlights of him at AAA. And those of you who are my age, you may remember this. There used to be a pitcher for the Mets years ago named Sid Fernandez, who was a little on the hefty side. Tolle at times can look a little hefty too, although he's not nearly as fat as Mass Live made him look today. The picture that Mass Live used made him look like he ate David Wells. He's not that big. However, he does remind me a little of Sid Fernandez, who pitched for the New York Mets. They used to call him Fat Sid. I think he was on he might have been on the 86 team that won the World Series.
Yep, finished 7th in Cy Young voting that year.
Okay, he was good. Fat Sid was good. And he had moments where he sucked, but overall he was pretty good. At his peak, he was really tough to hit. And, a guy that made hitters uncomfortable. But Breslow was asked why the early promotion for Payton Tolle. What was it about him that led the Red Sox to believe that he could handle this situation at this time of the year, again, after very little experience as a professional? Here's what he said. I think that's Breslow 6, Kevin. I'm sorry.
This organization does not typically bring a guy to the big leagues with 20 or so professional starts under his belt. What makes Payton uniquely qualified to make this big a leap this quickly?
Yeah, I think it's the total package, right? And when you evaluate whether or not someone is ready for a debut, and particularly a debut, late in the season in a pennant race, you think about the physical talent and that I think is pretty clear. He's got an elite fastball, which is the foundation of his repertoire, unique extension, fastball playability, the ability to get guys to swing and miss in the strike zone. And his secondaries have taken real steps forward this year. Credit to him and the work that he's done and the rest of the pitching group. And then you just think about the kind of emotional maturity and whether or not we feel like he's going to be able to perform on this stage. And he's checked every box, and we're not going to know for sure until he takes the ball under the lights tonight. But like I said, we've got every reason to believe that he's going to be successful. He's super competitive. And I think he balances being a great teammate and having a great time and really loving being around his teammates and this game, with understanding that when he gets the ball, it's game time. And he's mature beyond his years. He's had, certainly tragedy with the loss of his mom, and he's had to overcome significant obstacles. And I think this is just another one, and we're really confident he'll be able to do it.
So there's a lot to like about Payton Tolle from the Red Sox perspective. And I would say, again, let's not leave out the desperation part. Okay, so we're all glad that Tolle's here. He wouldn't be here if the Red Sox had picked up a veteran starter at the deadline who could help them, or if they had other options that weren't injured in their system. So I think that's an important thing to be said. Now, the fact that they brought him up anyway, Tyler, is still newsworthy. Because this is not typically something the Red Sox have done or would do.
No, there's no team that, while competing for a playoff spot and making a playoff push, would want to bring up a starter, a prospect within itself who had never done it at the big leagues, who can't throw more than 75 pitches in an outing. It's just not efficient. That's something you're going to be worried about when you're trying to keep arms fresh, especially when you have workload concerns for Crochet and Giolito as the year continues to progress. Even Dustin May hadn't thrown 100 innings since 2019. Like, these are a lot of guys that, if you're throwing more mileage on this bullpen, which has been incredible, we're talking about, best ERA in baseball so far, that bullpen. You're asking a lot out of Payton Tolle, but this is the highest ceiling option you have. And I think for this Red Sox team and where they are right now, they want the highest ceiling option, because if you get hot at the right time, you can make a run in this American League. There's no one that scares you. I look at the Tigers right now. If anyone's been paying attention to them, outside of Skubal, their rotation sucks. It's crap. Casey Mize has fallen off a cliff in the second half. Jack Flaherty last year was awesome. Went to the Dodgers, won the World Series. Good for him. Sucks this year. Has nothing that is really scaring you. You go beyond that. The Yankees, it's Max Fried and Carlos Rodon. They pitch pretty well against you. You're also one of the best teams in baseball against left-handed pitching. Not having Rob Refsnyder in those games was a massive deal for you, in my opinion. We saw, obviously, first game back, he immediately doing damage against a lefty again. Those teams don't scare me. Even the Mariners, they can pitch. That's not a team with a bunch of playoff experience. There's no one here that should terrify you or you kind of crumble at and don't think you can compete against. So guess what? You're going to use every trick in your bag to see how far this season can go.
So, Tyler, here's what I would tell you about where the Red Sox are. And obviously, first place in the division's in play. If they don't get a wild card spot of any kind at this stage, frankly, it's a fail. They have a chance to be the top wild card team. They have a chance to win the division. And if those things are true in a bad American League, you have a chance to win the American League and you have a chance to go to the World Series. So those are all things that I believe. Tonight is, a night that, look, we're almost in September here and the Red Sox are in it. And you've got the best pitcher in baseball facing them, a highly touted prospect or highly regarded prospect. Because Tolle hasn't been in the system long enough to get the kind of hype that other guys do. He's gotten hype anyway, but he's only been here a year. And I'm happy to report that Livy Dunn is in the ballpark.
Oh, God.
Okay, so Olivia Dunn, who's, are they married or are they just dating?
I think they're just dating. Okay. I think that's where they've kept it at this point.
So Paul Skeens,
Kevin? Does Kevin Majori know?
They might be engaged or something.
That feels like something he would.
Okay, so Livy Dunn is in the ballpark. I think she is on her way up to the suites.
We'll
up
get
there.
8 TikToks, Maz. I promise you that.
Unless it's possible she's sitting in the stands. My guess is she's being protected from all the Nimrods and massholes in the stands. And that
from the Jay Stews that are in the stands?
Well, I would certainly keep her away from Jay Stu and everybody else. But top of the hour, Kevin will get you caught up on headlines. Milliken's got you for the next half hour. This is an extended version of the baseball hour. I'd love to tell you it's a pennant race version, but it isn't. We just have different programming tonight. We have a football game featuring Georgia Tech coming up at 7:30, so we extended the baseball hour. Milliken will take you there. Everybody have a fabulous Labor Day weekend, including you, Tyler.
Thank you, Maz.
Kevin, you too, and Skaz. I'm not leaving you out, and we'll catch you next week.
From the Tell Your Tire Studios, WBZ FM HD1. It's not just the games. It's Toucher and Hardy, Zolak and Bertrand, Felger and Mazz, Joe Murray. For Boston sports fans, it's 98.5, the Sports Hub. Beasley Media Group Station. Sports Hub headlines. Presented by Celsius Energy Drinks.
As it was first reported earlier in the day, then confirmed by the team, Chris Cotillo had it first. The Red Sox have released Walker Bueller. The team is now back home at Fenway Park to start a weekend series with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Top pitching prospect Payton Tolle will be making his major league debut in under 10 minutes. The Pirates, they counter. We were just talking about it with Paul Skeens. He is one of the best in the game. First pitch, like I said, is at 7:10. The Patriots, they are releasing safety Jabril Peppers. Peppers had $4.32 million guaranteed remaining on his contract for this season. The team also made some other moves. They claimed defensive tackle Eric Gregory off waivers from Cincinnati. They released offensive tackle Jack Conley from the practice squad. They signed tackle Thayer Munford Jr. to the practice squad as well. 9 days away from the season opener, Jeff Howe today saying that as for standout cornerback Christian Gonzalez, his hamstring injury has been complicated, and it has been difficult to establish a date for his return. When the Patriots get back to practice on Monday, it will be exactly 5 weeks to the day from when Gonzalez left practice with that injury on July 28th. Sports Hub headlines are brought to you by the McGovern Auto Group. McGovern and 98.5 The Sports Hub are giving away a brand new Ford F-150. For more info on how to enter, follow 98.5 The Sports Hub and McGovern Auto Group on Instagram. Complete rules and details at 985thesportshub.com. I'm Kevin Majori on Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub. That's it for headlines.
Listen to it, laugh at it, get mad at it, agree with it, argue about it. It is Boston Sports. Boston Sports. And it is all we do. 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Every pitch, every swing, every hit, every game, every doubleheader, every rainout, we'll be here. Every Wednesday, it's more of the Baseball Hour with Tony Mazz on the Sports Hub.
He left me. He abandoned me. He was done with me for the day. I don't know if I nerded out too much. I don't know if he got sick of all the prospect talk. I've been a little unbearable today. I'll be honest with you. Talking Payton Tolle, everyone knows it's all I want to say. It's all I want to kind of dive into. And now we're 7 minutes away from Payton Tolle making his debut, and something feels different about tonight. And maybe it's because we're a month and 1 day from the wild card round actually starting to take place and get underway. And we haven't had this kind of feeling since 2021. And we're going to have some 2021 thoughts coming up next segment because something happened last night that triggered a lot of those 2021 memories. And some of them are amazing. Some of them make me very happy. But at the same time, they're a little traumatic at the same time because of what has happened the last couple years. But I was thinking today with Payton Tolle, and why does today feel so crazy? Why does it feel like this is one of those moments in Red Sox history where are you about to, elevate to a level? Are you about to kind of turn a corner and maybe enter this era of Red Sox baseball that is so different than the last 15 or 16 years where developing starting pitching has been this constant bugaboo? And you can go back over the years, whether you want to look all the way to Clay Buchholz and John Lester as the last time you had real successful starters. Now, Brian Bayo has kind of changed that tune this year, but I'm going to go to something Jared Carabas said, and I did say his name correctly. I know a lot of people remember beforehand. I didn't mess it up this time. I do know how to say Jared's name, but he put a tweet out, and a lot of people gave a kind of wild reaction to it and agreed, and I think felt the same way, and it was this. I'm trying to temper my expectations, but I haven't been this excited about a Red Sox pitching prospect getting called up since Craig Hansen. Now, Craig Hansen, I'll be real with you. I was a child at that time. I was 7 years old. I don't even think I could read at 7 years old. I was a late developer. It took me a little bit to get it all together. I know I give you baseball stats. Kevin, why are you looking at me like that? Why? Because you could read at maybe 4 or 5 years old? Jake, how old were you when you learned how to read?
I was also pretty late.
Okay, thank you. Me and Jake, we struggle. We battle. We're the younger generation around here. But Craig Hansen was a reliever, right? It wasn't a starting pitching prospect that we've seen like Payton Tolle, who just his rise through the minors, it's not completely unheard of. We've seen Chase Burns from the 2025 draft class make this jump, and he got shelled early on. Hell, the Red Sox picked up on his tipping and showed him what it was to kind of get taken into the barn and get beaten down. And there's been other guys from the 2024 draft class that have debuted. Nick Kurtz, he's going to win Rookie of the Year, as amazing as Roman Anthony is, and I always want to talk about him. But you've had, Christian Moore come up over that time and kind of make an impact doing his thing. Cam Smith down with the Astros. He was originally drafted by the Cubs. But why are people kind of reacting to Payton Tolle in this way? Because I go back to a couple years ago, and it was a different time for the Red Sox in 2022. Yes, they were coming off of, a great playoff run, but it was a team that was starving for pitching because they didn't capitalize on Kevin Gausman over the offseason, someone who signed for 5 years and 110, who would have been an absolute perfect fit for the Red Sox rotation at that point in time. But why does this feel so different with Payton Tolle? Why are we kind of sitting here and saying something's about to flip or a switch is about to flip? Because Brian Bayo was higher ranked than Payton Tolle initially. Brian Bayo graduated as the number 21 prospect in the sport. So when I look at Payton Tolle and I think we start talking about this development and all these different things, when Brian Bayo debuted, it was because he got forced to the majors. And yes, Tolle got forced to the majors. Bayo got forced up when a team was kind of already drowning and looking like, this isn't going to go, where this team kind of needs to be in a playoff spot or really compete like they did the year prior. Payton Tolle being up here right now, this feels like the kind of piece that can maybe push you above some of these other teams in the American League that are extremely close to you. And there's really no reason to fear a lot of these teams. Even the Blue Jays, right? You're 3-7 against them this year. They have a rotation of veterans that does make you worry between Max Scherzer, Kevin Gausman, a name we just brought up. Shane Bieber has come back and looked really good in that first initial start. But as we know with Tommy John, you may have one good start, one bad start. We lived that Chris Sale experience the last couple years. But I think for the Red Sox right now with Payton Tolle, I don't expect this to be a long-term starter role down the stretch. With him not being able to throw more than 80 pitches at this point in time, you're going to have to pick your spots. And yes, 3-4 weeks from now, when he starts to get closer to 20 innings past what he did a year ago or 30, it doesn't matter that he's 6'6", 250. You got to protect that elbow. You do not want him to get hurt at the end of the year and then all of a sudden he's out for all of 2026 and it feels like, oh no, there's this gap with the pitching lab and with these arms kind of coming through. And there's reasons to be optimistic with the Luis Perales, who just recently threw his first live bullpen. He'll be returning to Double-A, going to get some work in the AFL. Another very intriguing arm. But with Payton Tolle, it's the college arm that kind of rose all the way through the minors that quickly. And I think what makes this feel so special is that he's coming in and having this chance to kind of shape or reshape the outlook of the Red Sox and what's going to happen over the next 5 to 6 weeks. And it doesn't matter whether it is in that starter role to me or in a bullpen role or a bulk role, because when you get to the playoffs, we know what it is. It's going to be Garrett Crochet game 1. You're going to get Brian Bayo game 2, who has been excellent. His ERA is now below 3. We've seen him, despite Baseball Savant not loving him metric-wise or all these different ways to kind of analyze and break him down, he's generated soft contact and kept the ball on the ground. And then Lucas Giolito, who worries me. In a perfect world, he would not be starting a playoff game for me. 3.64 ERA in the second half. FIP's really around 5, which is the concerning part. He's been pretty up and down, but you go throw 8 innings of shutout ball and you're going to shut up a lot of people like me. And I think for Giolito, one of the things that did stick out for me in this appearance was that he was hitting 96 again. He hadn't hit 96 since August 3rd. August 3rd against the Astros. So maybe working on regular rest helps him. In these previous starts over that stretch, it was 6 days off between that time. This one was 5, and he complained earlier in the year he likes to be on his regular 5-day schedule. But I think you can get through the wild card round, and I think you can get through the ALDS with just 3 starters, and you'll be able to make it with days off and everything kind of included. It's when you get to the ALCS and World Series where you're going to have to get uncomfortable. And I think at that point in time, if you need a Game 4 starter, no, it's not going to be Dustin May unless, the previous 2 starts before the last one are something he can click into a little bit more. I'm sorry, I'm not going to jump into Dustin May and feel super confident, considering even when he was great against the Astros, he said he had no idea where the ball was going. That's a terrifying reality. It's nice when it works, but it's also scary when it doesn't. But I think you could pair Payton Tolle, even if it's something like 60 pitches at that time, with the Richard Fitz if he makes it back from neuritis. He was supposed to get examined today. I think Cooper Criswell could work in a certain capacity. Someone who I think would be getting starts and would have pushed them to go to Tolle a little bit later. But I think with Fitz going down, with Criswell dealing with this elbow injury, it kind of just accelerated this process. And in today's game, a lot of top pitching prospects, it's really not about time in the minors anymore or a certain amount of plate appearances or meeting a threshold. We see that a lot with position player prospects and different stuff like that. It's how many bullets you have when you're a pitcher and how those bullets are going to, last until eventually the UCL gives out or something's going to blow. And I think in this spot with Tolle, if you manage him correctly, he can be the difference maker for you and maybe save you from what was a failure of a deadline in a lot of ways. And do I look at Craig Breslow and say credit to him because he kept Tolle for this exact moment? No, I definitely don't. Because in his ideal world, Tolle's probably in a trade to get Joe Ryan or Sandy Alcantara if those teams were serious about moving controllable starters. We know they weren't because, as we've seen with Dylan Cease or Garrett Crochet or whoever you want to mention, all those guys get moved in the offseason when you can get more teams in the mix. But going down the list here, and you start to look at, really to me, all the pitching prospects that have shown up on different top 100 publications, and where does Tolle rank amongst them? Where does he separate them? Like Brian Bayo, as I said, number 21 in the game. That was a guy who took multiple years to become the guy we're seeing today. Someone who went through emotional kind of maturity issues on the mound. Last year was spiking his glove, doing different stuff like that. Just a little update. Payton Tolle strikes out his first batter in the big leagues. That is a beautiful thing. More of that, please. But when you start talking about, these prospects and why Payton Tolle feels so different, I think context is a big part of it. I think it's the fact that he hadn't thrown a pitch in professional baseball before April 4th this year and is now all the way here. And a lot of that has to do with his secondaries. We knew when he was at TCU and he got drafted that his fastball profile was going to be very unique. It's the same reason why the Red Sox were so into Joe Ryan in a lot of ways. That vertical approach angle where the fastball kind of just jumps on guys despite being somewhere like 94, 96 usually, not the 98 or 99s of the world where you see Paul Skeens, for example, live on a nightly basis. But when you go further beyond Brian Bayo, Henry Owens topped out as the number 19 prospect in the game. I remember being a 14-year-old kid and watching Henry Owens getting on the mound. And back then, we didn't have the ability to watch the minor leagues like we do. I've watched every Payton Tolle start down in AAA. I'm seeing the stuff pop and him work through different things. Henry Owens showed up to the big leagues and was sitting 90, 91. And evaluation and all these different things were so different back then. Where, if you were a soft thrower, people thought pitchability could get you by. And that's not saying you can't survive that way or whatever it may be. But we quickly learned Henry Owens wasn't that guy. Next up, you have Brian Johnson, who topped out at number 82. Another pitchability guy. Matt Barnes, a top 40 prospect. Alan Webster, top 50. A lot of these arms that showed up at times for the Red Sox in that 2014 to 2016 era. Obviously, Alan Webster coming over from the Dodgers in 2012. But going into 2013 and 14, another arm that was supposed to pop that never did. Michael Bowden, topped out as number 31 on Baseball Prospectus's list. These are guys that were all mentioned in the same conversation as Tolle. And you wonder why this feels like that moment. And I think just for Tolle right now, it's that ability to impact a playoff race. It's that chance to, not be. It's hard to compare him, I think, to David Sale or, David Price or Chris Sale or even a Garrett Crochet at this point in time because he's going to make real starts over the next couple weeks. And in a perfect world, you probably don't have to do that if you had the Criswell, if you had, Criswell being able to go out there and make his starts like he did in Houston. If you had Richard Fitz able to work in a bulk row with Brennan Bernardino, who might be the greatest opener I've ever seen. People don't want to give Brennan Bernardino credit for what he's doing. It's a career like 115 ERA and like 13 opener outings. That stuff, okay, you can survive a couple weeks doing that. Hell, we saw in the playoffs the last couple of years, teams are willing to do bullpen games. But even beyond that, right? Anthony Renato, Casey Kelly, Jay Groom, Justin Masterson, like these were all guys that hovered in that 30 to 70 range depending on the year. And then you get to the John Lesters and the Clay Buchholz of the world. And I think that's why this feels that way, because when those guys came up, they were in the middle of one of the greatest eras in Red Sox baseball, where you were competing and trying to push for a World Series. And John Lester and Clay Buchholz, like those moments where they were in the middle of a playoff race came a little bit later than someone like Tolle and where he's at right now. They had more of that seasoning. But I think for Tolle in this chance here, if a guy has the makeup and the maturity like he's shown, where not only does he work fast, but you had that first inning in Worcester in that first start where he gives up a grand slam and it's 6 runs and Mikey Romero lets him down. Guess what? He goes and throws 4 scoreless after that, shows that maturity you're kind of starving and looking for. That's the stuff that gives me hope, along with the development of his secondaries, to get him through the next couple weeks, to maybe give him a chance to really stick on this Red Sox pitching staff, whether it's in a rotation role or a bullpen role or however you want to frame it. I think that's why we're feeling this excitement. It's how fast he rode up through the minors. It's the fact that he was a college arm a year ago, and all of a sudden now he looks like Garrett Crochet in some ways, who is our 6'6", 245-pound lefty. That is the ace we've been looking for such a long time. I think part of it is also just what you're seeing in the Red Sox rotation. Between Bayo and Crochet, Tolle moving forward, you're going to get Dobbins and Crawford hopefully back for the start of next year. I mentioned Luis Perales earlier. There feels like there's going to be a real homegrown feel, not only to the player position side, but to the pitcher side. And that's the stuff you look at Craig Breslow and you see the impact he's making and how it can kind of change the perception of the Red Sox. And they have money to spend this offseason. I want them to go get a Dylan Cease or a Michael King or one of these guys. And you add them into the mix of what you have going right now. As much as people want to fawn over what you're doing with Roman Anthony and, what you have in terms of position player base, your pitching is going to be just as exciting. And that's without mentioning certain guys getting kicked to the bullpen that maybe won't be able to break the rotation or whatever it may be. For those who aren't watching the Sox game, Payton Tolle, scoreless first inning in his Red Sox debut so far. Didn't look like he was struggling against the Pirates offense that scores the fewest runs in all of baseball right now. I don't think too much of the Paul Skeens matchup. I know a lot of people just want to talk about it because he is the best pitcher in the sport. It's like the quarterback thing. People always want to say Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. Tom Brady's facing the Colts defense. Peyton Manning's facing the Patriots defense. In this instance, we're watching Payton Tolle face the Pirates offense. And goddamn, the Pirates offense is embarrassing. It's a joke. Bob Nutting should have to sell the Pirates. As someone who was at PNC Park just a couple weeks ago, they got planes flying over every single game saying sell the team. And that's the exact way it should be. But we're going to take a little break here. When we come back, I do want to talk about the 2021 Red Sox. I've been working through some emotions. Last night didn't make it easy, but you're not going to want to go anywhere, and we'll get back into it in a couple minutes here. whenever we were doing a Red Sox segment or whatever it was at that time. But I had 2021 on my mind last night. I've had it on my mind a lot just because the Red Sox, this is the first time since then that they have a real shot at making a playoff run. And to be fair, at this time in 2021, I was an emotional wreck. I was crashing out on these airwaves every single day. I was beefing with Felger and Mazz over whether the Red Sox were worth watching at that time, whether you should invest your time in them. And hey, they ended up being worth investing your time into. But I'll tell you, over those last 4 or 5 weeks, there were a lot of moments where they weren't worth it. And they made it very scary. And they got in game 162. And before you know it, you're in the ALCS. You're getting robbed by Laz Diaz, who that absolute fraud, not calling that strike for Nate Eovaldi against Jason Castro. I will never forgive you, Laz Diaz. I promise you that. But hearing that song belongs to someone. And initially it was Kevin Plawecki, who's retired now. A lot of people don't want to give respect to Kevin Plawecki. Hit 300 in 2020. 2021, he was really good too. 2022, you had the roster crying when they released him after being pathetic and sucking. But that song ended up traveling with someone when they left the Red Sox after 2021, and it was Kyle Schwarber, who had made that song the Phillies kind of run. And I know the Bruins wanted to pretend for a little bit like it belonged to them, those frauds. Sorry, never had a chance. We don't do that for that organization. It belonged to the Boston Red Sox, and even the Phillies as imitators couldn't really make that happen. But Kyle Schwarber, 4-homer game last night. What a weird year it's been for 4-homer games. Nick Kurtz, who almost had a 5-homer game, if you watched that one, had just come up short. Eugenio Suarez had 4 homers in a game earlier this year as well. Keep in mind, we hadn't seen a 4-homer game since 2017. I think it was Scooter Gennett with Cincinnati, and I think it was JD Martinez the year before he had come to the Boston Red Sox. Before that, the last 4-homer game, Josh Hamilton. That was the last time. So to see it 3 different times this year, something weird is in the water. But I sit here and I circle back here every couple months. It was a little bit there when we recently played the Phillies, but not being able to get Kyle Schwarber to be a Red Sox over this culture, over this 2 or 3 year point where you had a lot of people leaving the organization, and it felt like you were trying to do Band-Aids, whether it was Justin Turner here for a short time, trying to be that leader. Trevor Story struggling to kind of become the leader he is today because he was dealing with injuries and, the performance wasn't really there. And it's hard to lead from the front when you aren't able to put up the numbers that you need to. But Kyle Schwarber, since joining the Phillies, 2022, he hit 46 homers. 2023, he hit 47. 2024, he hit 38. Now we're at 2025. He's up to 49. He's one short of Cal Raleigh for tying the MLB lead right now. And he's going to be a free agent this year. And I want to look back at 2021 and that offseason that followed, because whether it was Kevin Gausman, who you didn't go and chase at that time, whether it was Kyle Schwarber, who you chose to keep JD Martinez, who disappointed you in 2022, was not the same guy he had been in the previous year. Obviously, you don't trade him at the deadline where there were offers allegedly for someone like Mark Vientos at that time. You held on and stayed over the luxury tax, but that was really the downfall that led to 22, 23, 24, and John Henry not being willing to invest in those teams properly post-2022 impacted it quite a bit. But all I'm saying is, heading into this offseason, I know Craig Breslow is not a big fan of the DH that doesn't move. He'll tell you trading Rafael Devers immediately changed everything for this Red Sox team, the power of friendship. Well, you're lucky Roman Anthony showed up and became one of the most valuable players in the sport. It also helps when you have the best ERA in all of baseball since June 8th. A lot of people want to ignore those details. It's just Devers was poisoning everyone despite him going off in August. We've heard Mike Yastrzemski talk about how great of a teammate he was. We saw David Hamilton 2-3 weeks ago down in Worcester talking about how he went to Raffy and he was kind of that person, at least from a relationship standpoint, if he was struggling, he could go and talk to. I think with Kyle Schwarber here, do you take a run at him if you're the Red Sox? And Cora was basically drooling talking about him when they played the Phillies. I would make a run at Kyle Schwarber again, and I think it's going to cost something like 3 years, $90 million. He signed for just over $80 million for 4 on this last deal. But I still think Kyle Schwarber could be such a great piece for this team, especially if Alex Bregman walks. The fact that extension talks have been tabled until then, if you're looking for another way to rebuild some of that culture, and I think you need to bring Bregman back, don't mistake any of this. Don't take it another way. But I think Kyle Schwarber is someone, as this young group develops and really, I think after this playoff run where you're going to see them take some of their bumps and learn what it's like to be in that environment, I feel like Kyle Schwarber would fit very nicely into this group, and you got to do something with Masataka Yoshida. I think seeing Walker Bueller get DFA'd does give me a little hope that Yoshida might be the next one up, or that they're at least willing to eat some money, hopefully, come this offseason to get him off of the roster, because let's be real, he might get pushed out of regular playing time with what David Hamilton's now doing. Because if David Hamilton can play second base against righties, you play Nathaniel Lowe at first base every